Hello, everybody watching live and on demand, and welcome to WiCX Talk Trends, Decoding Consumer Confidence During the Cost of Living Crisis. I'm thrilled to see that so many of you have joined us for this discussion, which is hosted by Women in CX in collaboration with CallMiner, the leading provider of conversation intelligence to improve customer experience. Pardon me. We are here to discuss the findings of a recent CCMA commissioned research report supported by CallMiner into consumer confidence, looking at supporting your customers and maintaining confidence amid rising living costs. The report is titled Implications of Changing Consumer Confidence on Customer Contact. And if you haven't seen it yet, don't worry, we'll be sending a copy straight to your inbox after the panel. So I'll be your host today. And if anyone doesn't know me, I'm Clare Muscutt, and I'm the founder of Women in CX, the world's first community for women working in customer experience and technology. And we exist to unleash the power of women to lead the movement for human-centered business through content, community, education, and events just like these. So, as I said, lovely to see everybody tuning in and so many allies with us today as well. So please do let us know in the chat where you're joining us from today. And as we'd really like you to get involved and participate in this discussion, please also let us know the answer to the first question we're also going to be asking our panelists. Are your customers changing their behaviours in response to the cost of a living crisis? So if you'd like to let us know maybe what industry you're in, we'll be able to shout some of those out shortly too. So today we've got a 40-minute panel followed by Q&A. So please do feel free to keep your comments coming in as we go along. And if you want to pop any questions into the chat, our team who are working behind the scenes will collect them up and we'll be ready to ask them to the panelists on behalf at the end. So before I introduce our incredible panelists, please let me set the scene for today's discussion by sharing some of the headlines from the implications of changing consumer confidence on customer contact report. So as we all know, the rising living costs have impacted consumer behaviour in particularly profound ways. So today our discussion is going to revolve around some key themes. The first one is strategies for responding to rising living costs, where we'll explore how organisations are adapting their strategies to support customers during challenging times. And then we'll go into the impacts of changing consumer behaviours. So we'll be looking at how customers are changing their spending patterns, switching brands, and seeking better value for money. And as these shifts are having such significant implications for market dynamics and customer loyalty, we'll be discussing how businesses can respond most effectively. But there's also the need to talk about bridging the proactivity gap in customer contact. So despite the potential benefits of proactive customer engagement, there's still this huge gap between customer expectations and our actual outreach by service providers. So we'll be discussing proactive contact and sharing some examples of how organisations are overcoming challenges and, in fact, enhancing customer satisfaction. And finally, we wouldn't be a Women in CX panel if we didn't discuss the confidence gap between women and men when managing finances. So our panel will discuss the confidence disparity between genders when it comes to financial confidence, and we'll look at the factors contributing to this gap and exploring strategies to empower women. So before I introduce our panelists, let's see if we've got any people joining. So we've got Kerry, Charlotte, Beth, Sandra, Sabine, we've got Amy as well. Lots of people are talking about their own experiences of having to switch providers themselves due to the cost of living crisis as well. So please do keep your intros coming in there. We'd love to know where you're joining us from as well. So so our panel today includes an absolutely fantastic group of CX leaders from across the world who bring a wealth of experience and different perspectives and insights. So first, I'd love to welcome to the stage Brooke, Wenrick, the Director of Brand and Communications at CallMiner, Cynthia, Nkirote, Customer Insights Manager at Absa Bank, Samantha, Conyers, Chief Experience Officer at First Retail Group, and Sandra, Thompson, the founder of EI Evolution. Welcome, ladies. How are you doing today?
Really good, thank you.
Good. Awesome. So I'm so excited for this. I've had some amazing conversations in preparation for this, so I can't wait to get into it. So to start with the introductions, Sam, I'm going to pick on you first. Like to tell us a little bit more about you, what you do.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Samantha Conyers, and as always, I'm thrilled to be here with the WiCX family. Today's topic is something very important to me personally, as well as from a professional perspective. So excited to talk about the impact of the cost of living on our customers. You know, I started my career in telecommunications where I had countless data as it related to how customers were spending their money. But, now in the retail space, it's really interesting to see that from a different perspective. I've had a chance to see it from so many perspectives, and really excited to be part of this panel to talk about how it impacts our customers in the Caribbean, as well as from a global perspective throughout my career as a consultant in customer experience. So thanks for having me.
So happy to have you with us, Sam. And I just saw Lorenzo pop up, who I met at your conference in the Caribbean last year. Hi, Lorenzo. So next we'll go to Brooke. Please tell us a little bit more about you and a bit more about CallMiner.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Claire. I'm Brooke Wenrick. I am the Director of Brand and Communications at CallMiner. As Claire mentioned, CallMiner is a conversation intelligence platform. So we collect and analyze all of the conversations that organizations have with their customers. Oftentimes that's via the contact center, whether it's voice or text-based, but it can also be conversations outside of the contact center. And we analyze those conversations to uncover insights into things like contact center efficiency, agent performance, customer experience, so businesses can make better decisions related to all of those activities and areas. I also had the pleasure of working directly with CCMA on the report that's going to be guiding our discussion today. So I'm looking forward to diving in with all these great panelists.
Perfect, thank you. And Cynthia next.
Thank you so much, Claire. My name is Cynthia Nkirote, Customer Insights Manager at Absa Bank. Very delighted to join this conversation. Interestingly, the survey was carried out in the UK, but the findings apply to all globally. And so it's interesting to just see how the correlation there sits. I love working with data. I enjoy driving those meaningful insights that drive the actions that we need to ensure that we are continuously and sustainably driving great experiences to our customers. Thank you.
Awesome. And last but definitely not least, Sandra.
Hi, I'm Sandra Thompson. I'm the founding director of EI Evolution. I'm a customer and employee consultant, experience consultant, and I blend that with emotion intelligence. So I'm a coach. What does that mean? Well, it means I'm trying hard to get people to think about empathy and emotion and to think about the brain. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I will be representing what I know about the brain.
We love how you represent the brain, Sandra, and I'm sure there'll be a lot for you to add to this conversation too from that perspective. So to kick off then, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing how consumers are adapting to higher living costs by switching brands and providers and changing their spending patterns. And many have actually done things like switch supermarkets and tried new service providers to save money, which is significantly impacting businesses' market share. So I thought I'd start with Brooke to ask a little bit more about what the report had to say about how customers are changing their behaviours and how this is impacting organisations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think overall, the report has indicated that consumer confidence has risen in the past year, which is a good thing. So we saw that 32% in relation to their spending were more confident in 2024 than in 2025, or 25% in 2023. And I think that that's great on the surface, but when you kind of go a level deeper, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that consumers have changed their behaviors to adjust to this cost of living crisis, things like inflation and rising costs. And so it's not necessarily just that they're more confident. I think that it's also because they're becoming more savvy in their spending and their financial diligence. And that's really important. I think we saw in some of the findings, so 25% said that they switched supermarkets, 23% said that they tried to switch their mobile or broadband providers, and 13% said that they tried to switch their bank to save money or get better services. And those are just a few of the areas that we looked at. There were other providers that consumers also switched to save money. But I think that what that says to us is that organizations really need to focus on customer experience and the outcomes that they're delivering to consumers to keep them to stay. Because in this time of rising costs, consumers are saying, if you don't give me what I want as a consumer, I'm willing to find it elsewhere. So it's putting so much more pressure on organizations to meet consumers where they're at.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for that, Brooke. And from a retail perspective, Sam, what have you been seeing happening?
Yeah, I think that, as Cynthia mentioned and as Brooke highlighted, right, the report clearly highlights a rise in consumers' ability to be more savvy. I love how the report sort of coined it, savvy customer, the rise of the savvy customer. And, as I mentioned, having a career that has gone, from telecom to healthcare to finance and now in retail, it's really interesting to see the impacts of that. And I think to put it in a nutshell, I'd love to share a really quick example. We launched Miniso, which is one of the fastest growing retail brands in the world. Miniso is a Chinese lifestyle variety brand. And the best thing about Miniso for our customers and to anybody that doesn't know, it is the price point. So to put it in perspective, we sold out in 3 weeks stock that we had forecasted for 5 months. Now, while we see sales rates declining across some of our luxury brands, again, seeing increased spending and increased consumer behavior, increased consumer loyalty, consumer satisfaction as it relates to some more low-cost alternatives. And again, to sort of reiterate what Brooke said, it's just bringing that choice, bringing the options, and then of course capitalizing on a great experience to deliver to our customers. Now, inflation rates in our part of the world, of course, really different, and Cynthia will mention similarly from an African perspective. We have higher inflation rates, probably higher unemployment rates that makes, for a perfect storm as it relates to the cost of living crisis. So for us in retail, the challenge is really looking at the value-oriented lines like Miniso and seeing real results there in terms of giving customers lower cost, high value options. Of course, we prioritize customer experience, a lot of initiatives to capture data, to deliver more personalized experiences to customers, ensure that we understand their shopping behaviors and shopping trends. And then I think the last thing I would talk about is the supply chain optimization. So again, just ensuring that we go direct to suppliers to bring costs down as much as possible for our customers so that they have the opportunity to purchase right here in the Caribbean for the same price that they do online or if they were in a store in the States.
That's super interesting. I was thinking about a UK example would be how supermarket switching specifically has massively impacted what is known as the Big Four. So when the German discounters arrived before the pandemic, they became massively popular straight away because of that low cost price point. But actually, they've continued to engineer quality and value into many of their products. So that Aldi and Lidl used to be kind of looked down upon in some ways, but now really savvy shopping is a popular thing. So as the cost of living crisis impact has increased, the switching has continued to erode market share of the bigger players. And it's the Aldis and the Lidls of the world who are growing exponentially in, I suppose, being in the right position with a low-cost operating model to be able to respond to that. And they keep opening stores, whereas other bigger brands are closing. So yes, Cynthia, bringing it on to financial services, what have you been seeing? How have you been responding differently as a result?
Thank you, Claire. And particularly in the African market, just to put it in perspective, where when you go to the genesis of the main issue here, it's based on mostly how we were socialized. And so when we now bring that into our institutions, how do we demystify banking and how do we make it speak to the people in view of the current uncertainty that we're in terms of the risks? So we've really had to redefine what risk looks like for us and customize solutions as much as possible to be able to meet our customers' needs. So in our space, we've been able to take the bank down to the grassroots level through agency banking, being able to be at the footprint and at the shop of our customers, at their homes, brand visibility and service availability at the very deeper levels of the communities that we serve. Secondly, we've been able to ensure sustainability. We're looking at the future, who are our customers tomorrow, and how can we empower them to appreciate what money really is and how it could work for them to drive financial freedom and financial literacy. We've also had to package our products, looking at zero fees or charges to ensure that we're able to be as inclusive and drive that diversity to all, driving financial dignity, which is very important for the communities that we serve. We are also really leveraging on digital to drive digital banking and ensure that even those customers who have that feature phone or a smartphone are still able to access and conveniently so financial services at their comfort. And we are also very big on women in business, especially for us in Absa Bank. How do we now move away from empowering just one gender and driving equity across genders? Just from how the report was also looking, there's that disparity between men and women and the risks that they would take. And so also empowering our women to ensure that we are driving sustainability in their businesses. We're supporting them, especially at this time of need where most people are only looking at the basic needs due to the high cost of living and inflation. Thank
Lovely.
you.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think there was so many great examples of triple bottom line benefit there. So I think we've all heard mention of like propositions that are meeting customers where they need to be met with the right offers and pricing strategies themselves. And I'm sure we'll come to talk more about loyalty shortly. But Sandra, I was going to ask you the, I suppose, brain question, like what are some of the best and most effective strategies of being able to engage with customers at these kind of difficult times, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd just like to pick on something that Cynthia said, because there was a word
Sure.
that kind of smacked me around the head like a saucepan, which was the word dignity. Now, there it is, because ultimately what you're doing is you're thinking about, as a brand, you're thinking about the customer kind of psyche, what's going to make them feel comfortable at this time of uncertainty and turbulence. And if you think of a word like dignity, what can you do for all of those different personality, all those different customer types, so that they maintain their status within their family, within their community? And the interesting thing is that just over 100 years ago, we had this situation with the Great Depression. We had a car manufacturer in the UK and we had Henry Ford. And there was a fella called Morris in England who basically undercut Ford by about £300 back in the day. And he sold a fortune. He made an absolute fortune in the car manufacturing business. So these rules and these applications haven't changed. It's about turning the tables. What exactly is best for the customer and for them to keep their dignity, to keep control? Because that's, in a time of uncertainty, customers like to feel more control. They want to feel a bit more certain on their terms. So Sam's example of coming out with a brand that meets people where they're at, Cynthia's use of the language and the approach that they're taking, they're spot on, because it means often for companies turning around and thinking what's really best for them in their mindset right now.
And I suppose the flip side of this is the operating cost challenge, isn't there, that comes for businesses at this time. So as Sam mentioned, being able to respond with local sourcing, or was it local pricing? So I can't remember what you said, but distribution and sourcing being more local to reduce things like cost. It is a massive issue, isn't it, in being able to be agile enough to be able to respond when you have to do things like lower prices or invest more in other things like loyalty schemes. So I thought I'd just get us onto the next part of the conversation, which was another finding from the CCMA's 2024 report. That we're talking about, highlighting the significant proactivity gap, and the report found that many consumers are actually open to being contacted by service providers if it could help them save money, yet very few have actually experienced proactive outreach. So rather than just like being reactive during customers contacting them and saying they've got problems. So despite that growing awareness of the gap, there's been minimal improvement in proactive customer contact over the years. Whilst proactive contact can be beneficial, it can also risk alienating younger consumers, particularly if it's seen as intrusive. So I was thinking about like where I've seen really awesome proactive customer contact and how that actually impacted me during the COVID times, actually, and now the cost of living crisis. So in the UK, we've had this kind of perfect storm of COVID recovery, energy crisis, and then rising inflation, which for particularly homeowners has massively impacted the cost of living, because actually wages haven't risen with inflation at the same time. So I remember Octopus were like actually proactively reaching out to their customers during the energy crisis and talking about, for the worst case scenarios, how they could provide you with like blankets and hot water bottles and electric blankets and things free of charge, just to help their customers during a difficult time. But also if you needed to kind of create more of a payment plan that was going to spread the cost, because winter the bills were extortionate, but over the summer you'd be able to change them. And one really interesting thing was a lot of the time you see like emails get sent out, but you can't actually reply to them. But Octopus had made it so you could literally reply back to that email and say, this is my situation, can you help me? So being able to proactively reach out, but enable you to be able to contact directly just by reply to an email was I think really progressive for the industry. And I definitely noticed the difference with that. So I think Sandra, you touched on it, wasn't it? Like when you're going through times of uncertainty, being able to have support from brands that can reassure you during difficult times is a real advantage. But given that gap that we talked about, and the gap between customers actually not minding being contacted if we could help them, and actual engagement, how should organizations effectively leverage proactive outreach? And are there any really super successful examples that we could share?
So certainly in my experience of COVID, certainly my mortgage provider was very proactive with phone lines that were open for 24 hours, some days of the week. And I actually think that when you offer up these channels, people don't necessarily want to take them up, but they're reassured that you are creating that space. So I think that's one thing. The other thing as well is getting the messaging right, because certainly Octopus, I think, are outstanding in the tonality of their communication. There it is, in the tonality of their communication, in the sincerity and the warmth. But there were some organizations who got it horribly wrong, who came across as quite condescending, quite patronizing, quite, who on earth do you think we are? I mean, again, it comes back to the sensitivity of money and being vulnerable and being in a position of, I think it actually is vulnerability. So certainly the mortgage provider that I have opened all the channels, asked some very gentle but nudging questions, and it was up to me to choose that or not. So whether people did respond or not is another thing, but I think that was definitely my experience. That was the best example that I could give, because that's quite a big chunk of money.
I think that's a really good point, actually, as around like the vulnerability and the shame actually that comes alongside conversations with money, and that being able to like really get that message right, there is a big risk of incorrect delivery, isn't there? Or when you think about like emotional states maybe of customers when they're in difficult circumstances, like how you tread in either a conversation or an interaction can be, I suppose, liable to escalating faster because of the feelings that come around conversations about finances. So I was going to say, Brooke, have you got any examples you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think the vulnerability angle is really important, right? Because we think of ourselves as consumers, and in these scenarios, I don't think we're often forthcoming, right? Like most consumers, although maybe some, call in and say, I've lost my job, or I have, a medical scenario that has taken away my ability to pay a bill or something like that, right? Consumers are not usually saying those things outright. And so it can be very hard to identify the customers who need additional help. We have a customer in the UK, they're a debt collecting agency, who's trying to identify vulnerability in their conversations. And they're using acoustic measurements, they're using keywords to identify these consumers, even if they're not explicit about their challenges. So being able to identify consumers who need help, understand if their agents are providing that help. If they aren't, sort of going back to the consumer and addressing it, helping to support agent training, and then also trying to do that in real time. I think that technology is really powerful today in the fact that we don't have to necessarily wait until after the conversation to understand if a customer needs additional support. Should they be offered a specific type of offer or payment plan that helps them in their scenario? And so I think what it comes down to is that what we're talking about here is really hard to do, but it's not impossible. And I think when you look at the technology that exists today and the maturity of organizations that want to get there, I think there is the opportunity to sort of face consumer vulnerability head on, understand what your customers need, and then deliver that to them. And I think we haven't totally gotten back to this, but I think that loop is what keeps consumers loyal. It's what keeps them satisfied. It's what keeps them spending more money with your organization. And ultimately, that's the end goal.
Yeah, and Samantha's agreeing there, but also interestingly raising the issue of starting with employees. I think you kind of highlighted that there, and we have to at least talk about technology a bit here, don't we? Like, we can't talk about customer service and customer contact without discussing technology. So I think we never really kind of went back to that point, did we? That, you know, businesses are under a lot of pressure now. And in response, a lot of them have been moving to more digitized channels. The good ones have still maintained a way of talking to humans, but some of the less invested, let's say, in customer service might have been a bit quicker to move to things like AI and chatbot solutions that perhaps in some of these more complicated conditions would maybe not be as suitable. But I'm hearing what Brooke's saying, though, that, you know, when you've got that kind of level of digital, the data and the analytics that you're going to be able to utilize in order to do things like identify customers who might need more help, or who have maybe even like within operational data have like missed payments and that kind of things. That there is a risk, isn't there, of losing that human element. And I guess just opening up that conversation really around like, how do we really stay human? And I'm not saying human as it has to be an agent, but how do we maintain humanity in customer service during particularly difficult times?
I think one point I want to quickly make is that automation isn't a bad thing, right? Like, in this time of generative AI being everywhere, that there's a lot of power in automating the conversations that make the most sense, right? Like, a customer should be able to check their balance or confirm an appointment or something very simple without having to talk to a human. But I think what that means, and Claire, you touched on this a little bit, is that then the conversations that do get to human agents are just by nature more complex. They're harder to handle. And so if we aren't supporting and empowering our agents in those moments, then those are going to fail. So I think where AI is powerful, or any technology is powerful in that instance, is the empowerment of employees, right? Like, helping them feel better in the job that they are doing and feeling like that they can service customers better. And so I think that's where the power comes from. So I don't want to knock automation. There's a lot of real power in how and where organizations automate certain conversations, but it can't be without the consideration of then what are the conversations that are left over that do get to human agents, and how are those harder to handle, and how do we support agents better in those conversations?
I'm loving this. Like, Sam is just like commenting in the chat at the same time. Do you want to say that out loud, Sam?
Yeah, you know, I think I totally agree with Brooke, right? And I think that it's all about using technology to shorten the route to what your customer values, whoever your customer is. And sometimes that can be as simple as Brooke mentioned, hey, what's my balance? I can't find my balance. Or where can I pay my bill? Or what are your payment plans? And, you know, you can use technology, things like IVR trees to spit back automated responses, or links to a Google map to show your stores. So technology can really shorten the route to our customers, what they're looking for. But, you know, Brooke said it really well. If it is a complex question, how do you then use technology to empower your agent to understand, one, your customer's history, their buying behavior. Have we seen their purchases decline? Can we use technology to help our agents understand the customer behavior a little better? And then even take it a step further to, maybe be predictive. Can we use tech to, throw out some anti-churn initiatives or payment plan options for our customers based on, again, seeing changes in behavior? So, how I see it is always using technology to shorten the route to whatever it is our customer wants, right? And if that's human interaction, then make it easy for the human behind the scenes to do their job.
Yeah, I'm just reading in the comments. I think sentiment from Lorenzo and Kelly really agreeing with you there. And I love what Kelly said. Human and digital team members should complement each other. And she's in agreement that some journeys can be easily dealt with digitally. But really important point, the human guys need more support to be exceptional. So Sandra, I thought I might bring you back in there around how we can support our humans to be exceptional.
For sure, and I will answer that. I just want to add something to what Brooke and Sam have both said, because certainly I have seen friends be in a digital environment where they were presented with concise, simple information that helped them make a choice, and they much preferred to deal with that information than to talk to a human. Because if you talk to a human about something that you're really sensitive about, and you know you're going to kick off if someone says the wrong word or they try to be empathetic and it doesn't work, and you feel the risk if they ask you a question you don't want to answer, or you might not be able to answer, or if you answer it you feel stupid. If you can answer those things in a safe space, then I think that that's a phenomenal thing if brands can do that. So I think there's definitely a sense of safety when the digital space works really well. That's the first thing.
And I think I'm going to underline that, when the digital space works really well.
100%.
Well-designed user experiences that are actually designed to help the customer to do something rather than to just divert them. And example of that being how banks have digitized, like being able to basically look at like the impact of if you change your payments or terms on your mortgage, and being able to just like make those decisions and change your deals. So you don't actually have to speak to anybody to do that at all, which is great. And like for me, I don't really want to, go through something quite complicated and have them doing the maths for me. I'd like that. So that's a really important point. And also, just considering how digital in awkward situations actually might be a better solution. I hadn't really thought about that as well. But specifically talking about people. So let's say they've now got to your agents, and what are the kinds? I know Lorenzo mentioned empathy there, and I know that's a big word in your field. How do we help equip our people to be able to deal with the stressful situations of customers?
So again, there are kind of two answers here. The first thing is, are we really looking after our people? Because ultimately, when they have 1, 2, 10, 100 telephone calls from people who are distressed, from people who are concerned, angry, upset, all of these range of emotions, how are they coping with this? We know there's a thing called emotional contagion. We know that certain people can shake it off much more easily. We also know that people who really want to do the right thing, people who really want to solve a problem and can't, burn out because they feel like that it's an impossible situation. All they're doing is reeling out the same information and they're not actually making progress, or they're not really helping as much as they would like to help. So how are we really looking after our people? By ensuring that they have the empowerment, the autonomy to do the right thing. And how are we also ensuring that team leaders can recognize certain behaviors, particularly in a remote environment where people are starting to get tired, because ultimately they are often taking a battering from every single channel in something that is not their fault. So are we looking after their health and well-being? Are we ensuring that they're taking even greater breaks? Are we giving them a chance to vent? And are we making sure they're looking after themselves? I don't know that we're always doing that. And I really wished that we sorted that out earlier on and not tried to just carry on the way we were and to take this as a serious issue.
Yeah, a lot of people have ended up doing those kinds of jobs that actually at home in their bedrooms and not returning to the office environments, haven't they? So I know that agent burnout has become a bigger problem, hasn't it, in recent times? Oh, it's a big one. And I just got schooled on what COLC meant, which is cost of living crisis. Oh, yeah. in the comments. Thanks for explaining that one to me, Vicky. So moving us on again now then, thinking about that big question around the differences between men and women in financial confidence. And the report told us that 41% of men reported feeling more confident about their financial situation compared to 1 year ago, while only 23% of women felt the same way. And similarly, there was a recent Bank of America Institute's 14th annual workplace benefits report found that 53% of men reported good financial wellness compared to just 36% of women. So we know there's a persistent wage gap, with women earning only 84 cents on the dollar that a man makes, as well as the higher likelihood of women being unpaid carers and making significant career sacrifices due to motherhood. But what factors, panel, do you believe contribute to the confidence gap between men and women, and how can we best support women to take control of their financial confidence?
I'm happy to jump in and go first, Claire. I think that, I have, as many of you probably know, Claire definitely knows this one. Claire's met them. I have 2 kids. So, Claire started out by saying that, women make a lot of sacrifices from a home perspective. And, when you look at the income disparity, and then, that to me directly correlates with the confidence gap. In our region, the income disparity is definitely larger than that. I actually tried to find the data on it to talk about it today, and there isn't even data to talk about as it relates to income disparity between men and women. You can see it clearly in leadership roles, on boards, and again, with the number of women that are expected to sort of do it all, the struggle of the juggle as a working mom. For me, I think as a woman in a leadership position with kids, there are a lot of different things that you can do to support women taking control of their financial confidence. One, I think, is leading by example and being open to have the conversations, pushing for your team members as it relates to fairness in wages and bridging those gaps within your own organizations. I think it always starts for me, as you guys can tell recently, I've really flipped. Sandra, you would love this, but it always starts internally for me these days. And I think that's because of the industry that I'm in right now. You're right, working in retail, you can see the impact of starting internally first, and the way in which you treat your team members, the way in which you ensure they have the empowerment, the tools, the skills, and the resources to do what they need to do for your customers. So that's what I've sort of been trying to work on from my perspective, is building the confidence internally. From a female audience perspective, most of our managers in retail are female. So I'd like to big up First Retail for that. We have a lot of female store managers, so I'm really excited about that. And, you have to address it openly. And, Cynthia mentioned earlier dignity, and Sandra, we've all spoken about empathy, right? And I think that you have to sort of accept it and be willing to take the next step to deal with it. So we have to, address the income inequality and deal with it as female leaders in our businesses. And, as simple as networking and mentorship and being there to be a voice of reason and a voice of support for the females within your organization or within your circle, to understand that, there is an option to talk about, to get help. We have a lot of free courses that are offered by other women in leadership positions to help females get more control of their own financial independence.
And that, I totally agree with you, Sam. And that was a very impassioned speech. And Lorenzo's also given a big up to First Retail there as well. I was going to ask, Beth actually was mentioning something called Elvest. Brooke, can you tell us a bit more about that? I've never heard of it.
Beth actually might be better than I do. I came across them a number of years ago, actually at event in Boston. They're a US based, I'm not sure how global they are or not, that really supports women and how you basically plan for your financial future, but it's targeted towards women and the challenges that women have. And Beth put it out there, the perception that women aren't as good with money, which I think is ridiculous. I saw a stat, I think recently, I think it's Massachusetts is the state, but there are more single women in Massachusetts that own homes or properties or whatever than men. And that for me gave me great pride, where it's like, there's still the perception that women aren't good with money, yet we're the ones who are single women are owning more properties than men in the state of Massachusetts. And so I think it's women also gaining the confidence in themselves, right? That like, no, I actually am, I'm probably better with money than most of my male cohorts, if you look at some of those stats, but it's the belief in that and continuing to just change what society thinks about women and money, because most of them are just inherently false. But I want to go back to what Cynthia talked about a little bit earlier, because I know she's doing a lot of work at her organization related to empowering women and being in the financial services space. I would really love to hear more from Cynthia.
I would as well.
Oh, great, thank you. Definitely so. As I mentioned earlier, with the cultural and socialization bits, we get to see a lot of those discriminatory aspects coming into play. But proudly at Absa, we've been able to break that bias, and we are equally represented across all levels in terms of gender. So it's something we've been able to achieve over the years, and empowering teams as well to work closely together and drive that equity. So I'd like to also add, in terms of our offering, we are also keen to support women in ensuring that even the packagings are better customized to support especially new businesses and to help them grow. And that then at the end of the day will allow us to have equity even in businesses. We see more male-dominated businesses, but women are really coming in strongly. We've just closed our Women Inspire Me conference, which was within our African region. And the takeout notes were really, really impactful for every SME, allowing us to benchmark, because when you also look at who our role models are previously, we would always refer to a male gender role model. And so we need more of that in the women's space so that then we're able to connect. And also in terms of coaching and mentorship, having a woman guide you up the ladder. For those who have made it up there, and giving them those opportunities to also coach and mentor. So we have a lot of that at Absa, year on year, coaching and mentoring SMEs to ensure that they are getting to where we want to see every business, despite the gender, playing at. When you look at the education and exposure as well, for both consumers and the teams internally, there's a lot of training and empowerment to also give us those tools to support our customers and to also support our customers support their customers. So there's a lot of empowerment going on. And I think that's the winning formula. Like, we really need to break that bias and that norm that we're really used to.
So round of applause. I know you meant for that one. No, it's amazing to hear what you're doing. I think it's like globally, like wealth management particularly has just been positioned and marketed towards men. There just haven't been like products like that. Elvest sounds like it is being designed specifically with women in mind and being targeted and marketed towards women. And yeah, the ways in which businesses and brands are now recognizing it as an opportunity to support women better by listening and understanding and responding to those kinds of things is super important. Sandra, I'm sure you've probably got 5 pence worth to throw into this one.
I hate to say this, but it is an unconscious bias. It's a legacy of hundreds of years worth, where typically women had an allocation of money from a man. That's what we're fighting against. And I just hope that we can showcase even more in every walk of life even in our schools, educate the equality of ownership and empowerment and responsible use of money. And it sickens me to say it, but I know exactly that there are some incredible women, even in my family, who have done far better than the men, but we don't talk about it enough. We just get on with it. We just get on with it. So I really think that as often as we can, we have to showcase these people, talk about them more. And women, we've got to be more amplified about our successes, honestly.
Love that, Sandra. Got some amens and rounds of applause in the audience there as well. So, audience, we're going to be wrapping up shortly. So if you've got any questions you'd like to ask our panel, now would be a good time to start getting them into the chat. But we always like to end the panel with a bit of a future-facing look at what we think might be coming down the line. So what trends in customer experience and behaviours do you anticipate within the next 12 months? And how should we be adapting our CX strategies to align with these trends and ensure meaningful experiences? So Cynthia, do you want to go first on that one?
Gladly. I think for me, we might customize or develop a solution thinking that this is what the customer needs, but this is where the customer feedback really needs to come into play so that we know what our customers need and we're able to solve for them. We also need to really look at data to see that we are proactively looking at those trends across demographics and customer segments and ensuring that what the customers are really asking for, even without saying it, is identified and we can predict what they would need in the future. So a lot more on relationship management. And for me, I really like to keep experiences as simple as possible. Yes, we might be leveraging on technology to drive convenience, but we could only tap into that maybe to some extent. How do we keep those human interactions alive? For us, we are really keen on being that relationship bank. We empower our teams to be relationship oriented, build that relationship, visit the customer, sit down with them, pick up the emotions, the unspoken that will help us drive those solutions that the customer needs for the future.
Love that one. Thank you, Cynthia. And Sam?
Yeah, I agree with Cynthia in terms of keeping it simple. And as we know from a design perspective, that's actually the most difficult thing to do, right? To keep an experience or an interaction simple is much harder than it is to design a cumbersome or bureaucratic or red tape oriented process. I think for me, when I think about trends, not only in the retail industry, but in our region, it goes back to what Brooke said, that we're dealing with savvy customers who are empowered with a lot of information. And the way in which, from a strategic perspective, we go about designing around that is using data to be as predictive as possible. So, COVID, as we all know, the pandemic caught us, of course, totally came out of left field, caught everybody by surprise. But, there's a lot of positives that came out of it, one of it being the ability to pivot. So how do we learn from that and start to use data to predict behaviors? So, we're speaking about the cost of living crisis. We have, as businesses, we should have some insights as it relates to our customers' purchasing patterns and purchasing behavior. So again, going back to empathy and understanding our customers or meeting them where they are, how do we start to use that data to maybe predict what they need? Clare, you mentioned proactive outreach programs. So those programs must be designed based on data and must be delivered by empathetic, well-trained and empowered agents. So it's really a cycle, right? And for me, from a strategic perspective, again, it's about understanding how you're going to deliver that internally, how you're going to keep it as simple as possible. And, it goes to what Vicky said in the chat, spiraling cost of high customer dissatisfaction and high employee attrition, right? I don't think that's alone in the hospitality sector. I can tell you definitely in the retail sector, we have a high attrition rate. And perhaps that's why I'm so focused on getting it right inside first. rather than trying to design a simple journey and then consistently having to retrain and reorient employees because you have high attrition costs. So it's really a chicken or the egg thing for me, right? Understanding, using data to understand internally where our customers are at, as well as where our employees are at, and predicting their needs and trying to stay one step ahead in terms of the offerings that you have from an inside out perspective.
Interesting. So inside out and outside in,
Yeah.
but meeting it together. So we're thinking about those experiences. Yeah, totally agree. And I think the other dynamic is also like listening, I think, to the business as well, right? Because everything's changing so rapidly in terms of organizational goals. Technology is just going off, in a direction that we need to be moving with. So I think, like, for me, it's like, how do we get the balance right?
And I think that's the indicators, right, Claire? We have to look at the leading indicators, customer satisfaction being a lagging indicator, right? So you have to you have to be very savvy as it relates to the indicators that you're measuring in your business, and how are you correlating your lagging indicators like attrition, like customer satisfaction. What are the leading indicators that you're seeing change to have that impact on the end result? Because again, those are your lagging indicators, right? So you have to be a bit quicker in terms of identifying them from the leading indicator perspective.
Yeah. I suppose it's like being able to create a bit more of a vision for the future that is flexible enough and modular enough that you'll be able to change it. But there's no such thing as projects that you can deliver and it's finished anymore, is there? Your customer experience, your customer journey is never going to end. But making sure that you're investing in, I suppose, like the right infrastructure now that is modular, it's going to have capabilities that are able to grow as the customer grows in terms of like their behaviors and technology, isn't it, as well? And I think that's becoming increasingly important, particularly for older companies who are investing in digital transformation right now, in being able to not be curtailed any longer by legacy systems that have held them back for a really long time. So a lot of like moving to SaaS, aren't they, and cloud instead of their own internally built hardware. But I could talk about that all day. That's probably a different panel. So before we wrap up then, has anyone got anything else they'd like to add to that, or should we go around and have our one big takeaway from the conversation? Final thoughts. Okay. So Brooke, what would you like to leave the panel with today?
My final thought is really just around the fact that I can't kind of negate the importance of listening to your customers, right? Like, your customers are already telling you everything that you need to know about what they want, the type of services they want, the type of experiences they want, all of that. They're already communicating those things to you, whether you're listening or not. And so, Claire, you kind of touched on what I was going to say, but I think that to get there, you can't be scared of the technology that's also rapidly being generated today, right? Like, where we've come with generative AI in the past year and a half is incredible, and things like that will only become more powerful. And we've talked a lot about this, but really, truly, that balance between technology and humans to meet your customers where they are, I think, is the most important takeaway for me. And if organizations aren't doing that, then they're going to fall behind. They're going to be the ones that consumers switch from, like we heard from the CCMA report. They're willing to. So if you aren't delivering the experiences that they're telling you that they want, they will leave you for someone else.
See, I think that's very interesting. So I had an answer that I was thinking about up until last night. And then last night I went to an event about neuroscience and AI. Professors, doctors, academics. And here's the thing. There is fundamentally marvelous advances going on in the health sector when they are harnessing AI in the right way. So this isn't even about meeting customers where they are. This is coming up with diagnosis 15 years before the person is absolutely and utterly annihilated. This is incredible stuff. So I've changed my view on AI, and I really think that if organizations fundamentally understand what AI is, they can radically innovate in a way that we have never seen before. Because at the moment, it's the typical CRM approach, which is, here's a shiny thing, let's go and get it, plug it in, let's see what happens. No, we need to think strategically about tasks that we do. Let's get AI to fix those tasks from a way that our brains can't even comprehend. And then we're looking at something that is radically different. And I think it's going to happen within the next 12 months. A couple of organizations are going to do it, and then everyone else is going to go, whoop, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's follow these guys.
Yeah, no, I love that. Did you see there was a meme going around about a woman saying, can you figure out AI that will do my washing and cleaning so I can spend my time doing painting and writing poetry instead of it being the other way around? I'd love that. But you're totally right. And I think to just amplify that point, it's like keeping the human need in mind, isn't it, for the reasons that we're implementing these things, rather than it being driven entirely by how could that help us save costs being the key driver. Like, how can this help us to serve people better and as a consequence deliver a cost reduction? Sometimes that's just a bit skewed, isn't it, when it comes to conversations about AI and technology, but duality is possible. So final thoughts from you ladies. What would you like to leave the audience with? Cynthia?
Oh, thank you. I think as far as technology goes, I'd like to add that, like what Sandra has said, you will find that everyone will jump onto something. I think it's very important to first ideate and ensure that it's what you need and it speaks to the solution that you're looking for before you even implement. Organizations should also, that are providing these solutions, should also support businesses to allow us to do the POCs so that we can actually really, okay, that this is the solution that we need, because then as CX people will always be tasked with that responsibility of defining ROI against investments such as this in the technical space, and it will be very hard to do given that the solution that we took on is not what we actually really needed. So we need to have collaborative teams. I love collaborating a lot, internally as well and externally, to ensure that that voice of the customer is applied across. And what Samantha as well said in terms of insights, very important in ensuring that we are keen on drawing actions from those insights and applying them, so that it's not just a feedback program, but actually action-oriented and speaks to the organization from top to bottom.
Thank you, Cynthia. I love those. And quickly, Sam, one last final thought from you.
Yeah, I'll just put it all together. I think, we've said it so many times. Brooke mentioned listening to customers, and Sandra mentioned using technology, and Cynthia then using that technology to draw insights. And for me, that's really the concept of what it all is, right? Ensuring that not only when you're listening to customers, that you're using the right technology that allows you to draw the root causes from that, so that, as Cynthia mentioned, it's action oriented. And for me, it goes right back to using tech to shorten the route to what your customer values most. And if your customer is internal, then that technology is empowering you to pull those insights and understand the action plans. If the customer is external, then you know what they want and you know how to build or design something to help you get them there a little bit quicker. So, I'm as Sandra said, I'm really excited about what tech can do for us to, take away the waste of time tasks. So
we've ended on a super positive high note, and somehow that panel ended up bringing us back to probably what is the most pertinent issue of today, which is still back to how we move ahead with the future enabled with artificial intelligence and technology. So unfortunately, that's it for today. Our time is up, but I would just like to say a final thank you to our amazing panelists. Woo! Our sponsor, CallMiner, for helping us on our mission to challenge the status quo and ensure that women's voices are at the centre of important industry conversations. And of course, a huge thank you to you guys, to everybody who joined us today. We wouldn't be a CX community without asking for your feedback, which made me laugh when Sam just mentioned that as well. So we have popped a little link in the chat. It's only a couple of questions, but we'd really love to know what you thought of today, so we can practice what we preach. And as always, we value your feedback. So please keep an eye out on your email to access the implications of changing consumer confidence in customer contact report, which will be heading your way right now. And with future WiCX Talks Trends debates already in the works, make sure you're following us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our newsletters to stay up to date with all of our news and updates, so you'll be the first to hear any exciting news. But that's it for now. We'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.